Building wealth can feel really difficult. However, at the end of the day, it comes down to two specific skills: making money and spending money. If we're good at making money, but our spending money is bad, it means that we don't have direction, and as a result, we can't build towards the life that we actually want. But if we're really good at spending money, but we don't have money to spend, then it's pointless being good at spending money. And so we have to get good at both skills. Today we're going to speak mostly about spending money, but about money, it's important for us to understand that it is more than just spending power. Yes, the big part of money is that we want to be able to have more of it so that we can do more with our lives. But at the fundamentals of what money represents is it represents skills. It represents us being able to be valuable to the people around us and to the people that matter to us, to our kids, to our families, to our spouses, to anybody in our workspaces. Money is a representation of the value that we bring to society. And so if we can begin to look at money that way, we know that the amount of money that we're earning is directly linked to the amount of value that we are bringing. And it is a physical representation. It is not a representation of how much you are worth, but it is a representation of how much value you are adding to the world around you. Let's talk about spending money. If we want to learn how to make money, we first have to learn how to spend it, because spending money is about diligence, it's about discipline, and those skills teach us then how to apply it into making money right at the base, so that when we actually learn how to make money, we first have the two skills right at the core of being able to accomplish anything at all, and that's diligence and discipline. The discipline to spend something in a direction that is not necessarily what we want right now, but what is building into our future, and the diligence to keep doing it consistently. And so if we want to learn how to spend money, we first have to understand how it is that we view money ourselves. And oftentimes we don't necessarily view money for what it is, or how we spend it for what it is and what it represents. When we spend our money, every cent is going in a direction. And so our spending is a representation of the direction we are pointing ourselves in. Every single time that we spend a cent, a rand, or anything that we have, we are pointing ourselves in a direction. When we buy a snack, we are pointing ourselves in a direction. When we decide to buy a car, we're pointing ourselves in a specific direction and towards a specific image and identity. And so when we want to begin to spend money, we first have to understand that it is a representation and reflection of who we are. And if we want to understand who we are, we first have to assess how it is that we are currently spending our money. This is an exercise that I encourage every single person to do. Spend some time looking at what's going on in your bank account. Where are you spending your money? What are you spending your money on? And how much are you spending on what? Categorize it. Find out what it is that you are doing. Track yourself. If you don't know what's going on, you're not actually understanding who it is that you are becoming. If you want to know who you're becoming, you first have to understand how it is that you spend your money, because it'll reflect back to you who it is that you currently see yourself as. So here's one of the habits that really began to show me what it actually means to buy something and it reflect who I am right now, as well as the direction that I'm going in. So for a long time, about 5 years now, I've been leading a youth ministry, and very recently started working as a consultant full time. And so because I've been working in this space, I've been finding myself a lot more tired than I used to be. And so every time that I would arrive on a Friday evening, I found myself really tired and really struggling to invest into people at the level that I wanted them to. And so in my mind, I just need some energy. I'm going to stop at the petrol station. I'm going to grab a Red Bull and I'm going to carry on with my life. So every night before I'd head to youth, I'd grab a Red Bull, I'd throw it back, and then I'd hit the ground running and I'd go for it. However, over time, and when I actually did the exercise of reflecting upon what it was that I'm spending my money on, I saw this Red Bull purchase every Friday evening, and I said, Okay, so what does this Red Bull represent in both who I am right now and who I am becoming? And I looked at what my intention was. My intention is that I wanted to give the best of myself and I didn't have enough energy. And so I was going to try and get some energy. However, that Red Bull represented my desire for cheap, quick energy. And I found that yes, the Red Bull helps immediately and it gets your energy up, but it also dips you very quickly. And so in the scheme of who I am right now, it's a representation of my desire in the moment to have energy that I didn't earn. And so that really, it showed a gap in who I am. But showing that in the future, a projection of who I'm going to become, it shows that I'm consistently going to have lots of energy and then no energy very quickly because I'm seeking quick energy. I'm seeking cheap energy. Energy that comes in the form of a can that doesn't last forever but is enough to just get me through. But as I reflected, and like I said, our spending habits reflect who we are. I wanted to change that. I wanted to change who it was that I was becoming and who I am becoming. And so I decided that I was going to firstly stop spending my money on the Red Bulls. So I've stopped buying them. And what I've started to invest into now is vitamins and minerals to ensure that I am getting enough nutrients and electrolytes into my system. But secondly, I've also started investing into my food and what I'm eating during the day, how consistently I'm eating today, and when it is that I'm eating in the day to ensure that I sustain the amount of energy that I have all throughout the time that people need me and people need my investment and my impact and my thoughts. And so as I've begun to do that slowly now in this last little while, I've begun to see that I actually am and getting more energy to be able to do this more consistently. And I'm able to work longer, I'm able to do more for people, and the input that I actually put in is more valuable. And so it's a small shift in my mindset. However, it's a shift towards who I actually want to be, and it's a reflection of who I want to be rather than a reflection of who my underlying and natural baseline habits are going to traject me towards without my conscious intentional input. And so this is exactly what our spending is all across the board. What are you spending your money on? What does it represent about who you are? And if you were to project this behavior into the future, what is it going to represent of who you are becoming? And you have to decide, is this who you want to be? Is this who we want to be? Is this how we want to behave? Is this the kind of life that we want to lead? And if it isn't the life that we want to lead, we have to look at our spending habits, assess them, and decide, is this a true reflection of who I am? Or is it a cheap replacement of my intentions? So yes, spending money is incredibly important. If you want to spend money well, if you want to build the life that you want, you have to learn how to spend, and you have to become disciplined and diligent enough to do it consistently. And even when you don't feel like doing it, or when you have cravings, or when you have this immediate desire that you want to gratify, we have to decide at some point that there is something more important, that who we are going to be in the future is more important. And so we have to decide, is this something that is worth me spending money on? Or is it a cheap replacement for what actually matters to me? It's your decision. It's my decision. We each get to decide what we do with our money. At the end of the day, we're kind of grown up at this point and we get to decide what we do with our lives. And so if we want to go in a specific direction, our spending and how we spend and what we spend our money on is a direct reflection of where we are going. And if you don't like the picture of where you're going after you assess what you're spending your money on, it's time to decide